Welcome to Civics in a Year, the podcast that makes civic literacy fast, accessible, and surprisingly engaging. In just 10 minutes an episode, we'll tackle one of 250 essential questions about American democracy, how it works, why it matters, and what it means for you. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just someone who wants to better understand your country and your rights, you're in the right place. Civics in a Year is powered by the Civic Literacy Curriculum from the Center for American Civics and is produced in partnership with the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State University. Welcome back to Civics in a Year. Today I'm going to explore a speech by Barack Obama called A More Perfect Union. It's one he gave in 2008. So, in March of 2008, in the middle of a heated presidential campaign, Barack Obama delivered one of the most significant political speeches of the 21st century. The speech is entitled A More Perfect Union. It came at a moment of crisis for his campaign. Controversial remarks by his former pastor, Reverend Jeremiah White, had sparked a national debate. Questions about race, identity, and patriotism were dominating headlines. Obama could have chosen a short strategic response. Instead, he gave a speech that was long, reflective, and rooted deeply in American history and Constitution ideals. So in this episode, we're going to examine that speech, its historical context, and its arguments, and why it still matters. So the speech is delivered on March 18th, 2008 at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. This location matters. Philadelphia is where the Constitution was debated and signed in 1787. It's also a place deeply tied to both promise and the contradictions of American history. Plus, if you haven't been to the Constitution Center, highly suggest it. It's one of my favorite places. So Obama begins by grounding his speech in this history. We the people in order to form a more perfect union. He's quoting directly from the Preamble of the Constitution. The phrase becomes the central idea of the speech. The Constitution did not create a perfect system. It created a framework for improvement. And Obama makes this explicit. He says, the document they produced was eventually signed, but ultimately unfinished. It was stained by this nation's original sin of slavery. Right away, he establishes tension. The founding ideals are powerful and important, but they're incomplete. The United States has always been a work in progress. Obama then turns to the issue at the center of the controversy, race. He does not avoid it. He addresses it head on. He says, race is an issue that I believe this nation cannot afford to ignore right now. He acknowledges the long history of inequality. A constitution that had at its very core the ideal of equal citizenship was ultimately unfinished. It would take generations of Americans to narrow that gap between promise of our ideals and the reality of their time. That was a key theme of the speech. American history is defined by the gap between ideals and reality and the effort it takes to close that gap. Obama places himself within that history, referencing his own background. He says, I am the son of a Black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. I have brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, uncles, cousins of every race and of every hue. This is not just personal storytelling, it's part of a larger argument. Obama is presenting himself as someone who embodies the complexity of American identity. At the center of the controversy were statements made by Reverend Jeremiah White that many Americans found deeply offensive. Obama addresses this directly. He does not defend specific remarks. He says, I have already condemned in unequivocal terms the statements of Reverend White that have caused such controversy. But he also refuses to reduce White to those statements alone. He says, the profound mistake of Reverend White's sermon is not that he spoke about racism in our society. It's that he spoke of it, our society was static, as if no progress had been made. Obama then broadens the conversation. He discusses anger within the Black community. He says, That anger is not always productive, but it's real, it's powerful, and to simply wish it away only widens the chasm of misunderstanding. He also acknowledges resentment amongst white Americans. He says most working and middle class white Americans don't feel that they have been particularly privileged by their race. This is one of the most notable aspects of the speech. Obama is trying to hold multiple perspectives at once without dismissing any of them outright. After laying out these tensions, Obama turns toward the future. He argues that focusing only on division will prevent progress. He says, the question then is not whether we disagree. The question is, how do we work through our differences? He returns to the idea of the Constitution and the phrase, a more perfect union. The goal is not perfection. The goal is improvement. He emphasizes shared challenges. Quote, for the men and women of Reverend Wright's generation, the memories of humiliation and doubt and fear have not gone away. But for all those who have scratched and clawed their way to get a piece of the American dream, there is a different set of concerns. He then connects these experiences to broader national issues. Quote, this time we want to talk about the crumbling schools that are stealing the future of Black children and white children, the economic policies that favor the few over the many, end quote. This is where the speech shifts from reflection to action. Obama is arguing that unity is necessary, not just as an ideal, but as a practical requirement for solving real problems. So a more perfect union stands out for several reasons. First, it's rooted in constitutional language. Obama frames his argument using the preamble and connecting contemporary issues to founding principles. Second, it addresses race in a direct and nuanced way. Rather than simplifying the issue, he acknowledges its complexity and its tension. Third, it models a particular kind of political leadership, one that emphasizes reflection, history, and shared responsibility. The speech also raises enduring civic questions. What does it mean to form a more perfect union? How should a nation confront its past while moving forward? What role do citizens play in bridging divides? In 1787, the framers of the Constitution created a system designed not to be perfect, but to be improved. In 2008, Barack Obama returned to the idea in a moment of national tension. He did not offer easy answers. Instead, he offered a framework for thinking about difficult questions grounded in history, shaped by personal experience, and aimed at collective progress. He states, this union may never be perfect, but generation after generation has shown it can always be perfected. That idea remains at the heart of American civic life. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Civics in a Year.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Civics in a Year. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who cares about a constitutional republic as much as you do. For more episodes, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at civics.asu.edu. Make sure to check out the show notes for any relevant links. Special thanks to the United States Marine Band for their performance of the Stars and Stripes Forever. Let's keep building a stronger constitutional republic, one episode at a time.